Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm PVSB, one of the aforementioned CPG Guys. I'm also the VP of Partner Strategy and Development at Fetch Rewards, a mobile loyalty platform. As always, I'm joined by the yin to my yang. When it comes to deep knowledge about omni-channel CPG retail, well, he's full of it. You get that one? You get that joke? That was good. He's my West Coast bestie and my partner in crime. Please join me in welcoming the man known as Sri. Sri, how are you doing, old friend?
I'm doing awesome, but your jokes really reveal another story to me. You're still disappointed from the loss of the Dodgers.
I'm heartbroken, Sri. I mean, I'm not going to deny it, and I think you and I have discussed this. We're almost resigned to the fact that we're writing off the 2022 season, given what's not going on positively for either of our teams in off-season trades and stuff. I know, but this episode is airing just shortly before Christmas, so I'm just looking forward to the big holiday coming up this year and watching my daughter rip through all the presents and appreciate this first Christmas where she is clearly understanding of the fact that presents are coming her way. Should be a fun time.
Since it's the first Christmas where she's actually now walking and talking, what's the magic number, Peter? Is it 5? Is it 10? How many are you putting in front of that tree?
As many as my wife can probably wrap.
Right answer.
And yeah, she'll be stuffing. It'll be a little crazy, but
right answer.
In any event, thank you for joining me. Hey, before we get to our guest, Sri, I want to remind our audience that they can find all of the CPG Guys content on cpgguys.com. That's linked to our podcast on upwards of 40 platforms, links to us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, and a whole lot of other content, the podcasts we like to listen to. Just go to cpgguys.com and also join our community on LinkedIn. You can do that by going to linkedin.com or opening your LinkedIn app on your mobile device, search for CPG Guys and hit the blue follow plus button. It's pretty much that easy. And give us feedback. Leave that on ratethispodcast.com/CPG Guys. Best way to leave it is on the Apple platform. Lastly, I just want to mention that the CPG Guys are very proud to be a partner of NEW, the network of executive women. It's a community committed to a mission of gender equality in the workplace. In the middle of every Wednesday episode, there's an Easter egg with information and content about NEW, some of the new happenings. So please check it out. Best way to do that, newonline.org/CPG Guys. Finally, Sri, the week of Christmas is not only special for me, but it hopefully special for our audience in a number of ways. It's also the time when we're talking about the Omnis. Yes, the Omni Awards, the most prestigious omni-channel digital awards in the industry. Oh, well, okay, maybe a little tongue-in-cheek there, but it's the second year we're doing it. It's where we recognize brands, retailers, and marketplace for what we consider to be omni-channel excellence. They debut on Christmas Day on the CPG Guys podcast. We'll have 3 episodes, one for retailers, one for marketplaces, one for brands. And we are honored to be joined by our Fresh Fork co-hosts, Andrea Lay and Melissa Burdick. So please make sure to check those episodes out. They come Christmas Day. If you're like me, at some point in your career, you're suddenly thrust out of your job or career path and find yourself in a period of uncertainty and a lack of clear direction. That can be very daunting in the CPG retail space, especially for professionals with a few decades of experience. That's like me, Sri. I'm old. It was in such a situation that I found myself, and by some grace of fortune, I was introduced to this episode's guest by my friend and former colleague, Daryl Waymeyer, who is at dunnhumby. Our guest earned a reputation for helping CPG and retail professionals in mid-career reinvent themselves and find their ways back into meaningful career paths, all from the side of his desk while he worked full-time at companies like IRI and Numerator. Recently, he decided to turn his passion into a business when he founded Career Club with a mission to use proven sales methods to help people have a career that matters to them. He advertises Career Club as a first of its kind platform, a powerful tool for keeping track of the job hunt, managing your relationships, and connecting you to growing companies that are actively seeking new talent. He recently authored an ebook called Making Your Own Weather, which is coming out next month in January 2022. So please join Sri and me in welcoming to the podcast Bob Goodwin. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Welcome.
Hey, Peter. Hey, Sri. Great seeing you guys. Thank you.
So good to have you. Hey, before we dive into the questions, because Sri and I are really excited to talk to you today, this is something we think is highly relevant to our audience. We're not talking about engaging consumers today, but these are people who are looking to pursue that career path and do so effectively. So I think we've got some really interesting stuff to talk about. But before we dive in, would you let people know first where they can find Career Club online, and then share with us an overview of the kinds of services and solutions you offer to job seekers?
Yeah. Hey, so thanks again so much, guys, for having me. And it really is a pleasure and an honor to be with you guys today. You just super quick, you were talking about the time of year that it is and the omnis, yay. But also it's a time of year when people start thinking about, what they want to do, for next year. And, so people are really kind of thinking about their careers right now and what might be next for them. But to answer your question directly, if people want to find Career Club online, super simple, career.club. Yes, club is an extension. So that was great that we were able to pick that one up. Also, you can find us on LinkedIn. There's a Career Club page, as well as following me, Bob Goodwin. Career Club is using proven sales methods and tools to help folks find a career that matters to them. A job search is a big sales and marketing exercise, and most people don't really think of it in those terms. So what we've developed are a couple of services for people. One is kind of a do-it-yourself, which is, one, bringing CRM technology. Most people run their job search off of sticky notes and a spreadsheet. And what we've done is reapplied a robust CRM platform to get people organized. But then the second piece, and you kind of alluded to this, was people don't know all the cool companies that are out there. And we'll dig into this in a little bit. But basically what we've done is we've integrated a database of 1.5 million companies into the CRM tool, allowing the user to curate bespoke lists of companies that are of interest to them, right? And then from there, as they start to essentially bookmark the companies that are of interest to them, those become stage one deals in a sales funnel where we're bringing that sales mentality to actually managing your job search. So service number one, we call President's Club, which is do it yourself. Salespeople really tend to understand that offering. And then the second thing that we're just launching as a pilot right now that's got tremendous uptake is Concierge Club, which is a bit more of a do it for me service. So it's more turnkey. And again, we can kind of break this down a little bit in a while, but what we have learned is there is a large swath of the professional workforce out there who's not loving where they are, but they don't have the time, the energy, or kind of the understanding of the whole job search process to know how to move. And so what we've done with Career Club and the concierge service is basically a do it for me, do it with me kind of service to kind of jumpstart that process for folks.
Thank you, Bob. That's very helpful. I will urge our audience, go to the digital liner notes of this podcast episode. You will find links to Bob's LinkedIn profile, to Career Club on LinkedIn. You should follow that when you get there because he produces a series of LinkedIn Live events that are just not to be missed. Really great content. Doesn't cost you nothing. So that's a great way to get introduced to the services that Career Club is offering. And then, of course, a link to Career Club on its site. So that's all in the digital liner notes. Go find them there. Thank you, Bob. Let's kick it off. I am going to ask the first question. Would love to understand the actual backstory because we love origin stories here at the CPG Guys podcast. Can you give us the backstory of how you developed this passion for helping people like me with reinventing their careers and then actually turn that into what is now the Career Club?
Yeah. So, thank you. And, my background is sales and marketing. I've been a sales producer, sales executive my whole career. But I've been really blessed to be calling on world-class brands and leading the engagement teams. You mentioned like IRI, NPD, Numerator, for clients like Procter, Coca-Cola, Samsung. So these are world-class brands, right, who really nail like what's their value proposition, how do they effectively communicate about it, who's their target audience, how do they reach these people. Those are all marketing branding questions that highly apply to a job search. But unless you've been in that space, like why would you know a lot about that, right? So because I've got really good experience in both sales and marketing, it kind of naturally applied to job search. In terms of how it all got started, this is about 10 years ago. I like to network. I'm a salesperson. I like meeting people. And there was a friend of mine here in Cincinnati, which is where I'm based, who was initiating a job search. And for whatever reason, I kind of got on his short list of, hey, you should talk with Bob. If you need help in your job search, you should talk with Bob. And you do that a few thousand times over 10 years. You start to develop a point of view and some expertise on it. And so, the way that I kind of distilled it down, Peter, and why I was doing this on the side was job search is really hard, particularly if you're in transition, but also if you're just not happy where you are. We just spend too much time. Work is too much of a part of our lives to kind of ignore it. And when you're not happy, it's emotionally taxing. It affects your family. It affects your health. And so I'm like, this is a worthwhile endeavor to go help people and make a difference. And so kind of the mantra that I developed over time was I want to be able to encourage, empower, and enable people in their job search. And I just got a lot of personal fulfillment, seemed to be halfway decent at it. And as you said, earlier this year, I took the decision to make that my full-time gig.
Bob, thank you first of all for joining us on the show. Peter and I are grateful that you're here actually during these interesting times in the history of CPG and retail to come talk to our audience about careers and how to develop them and where to focus on. The first question I'd love to ask you, Bob, is you interact a lot with those who are actually looking for a career change, perhaps, or growth in their career. What are a couple of core activities you recommend that they do to prepare themselves so that they're actually successful in finding what they want and a better role than what they currently are? And where do you find the clash between what they want, what's available, and where's the trouble in adapting to the unique situation people ask you for?
Yeah, so there's a lot in that. So we'll kind of unpack that as we go here. But, the first thing that I would encourage people to think about is to be more strategic and less transactional. That your career is a marathon, not a sprint. And, if all we're doing is just sort of, hop skipping to the next tactical job because somebody called me, a recruiter called me, or somebody says, hey, I think you'd be good at that. Why don't you go do that? Or they're just dangling a little bit more money in front of you or what feels like a better title. There's nothing wrong with those things in and of themselves. But this is playing the long game. And so like if I said, look, ultimately I want to be, a brand leader for a world-class brand, then I need to start building a plan now for in 5 years, 7 years. How do I get there? How do I start networking with people who already have that job and kind of reverse engineer their career path and start being much more intentional and strategic to landing in that place? So first base for me, Sri, is knowing where you want to go, right? And not just in the next 12 months, but like in the next 5 years. Where do I really want to take my career? The second piece that I would say is you have to really know your value proposition. This is back to being a brand. You are the brand in your career. And so you have to know, like, what are your core competencies? What kind of problems do you solve for the customer, in this case, the employer? And then how do you effectively articulate those in a compelling way in the language that the customer appreciates? So, what's my unique value proposition, what I might call the product? Then the second, I speak in alliteration, so 4 Ps. What's the product? What's the pitch? Who are the prospects? And then what's the process? So the product is you. What's your unique value proposition? The second P is the pitch. Now, how do I go and speak about that compellingly, cogently, to both networking contexts, but also like in an interview context? And then the third piece is, who's the target audience for this? How do I go find people that have the problems, the challenges that I'm good at solving? And then how do I go execute a process and have a plan to go get there?
Yeah, to our audience listening in, that's a great takeaway framework, right? Like historically, all of us in the commercial world of CPG use the 4 Ps. Here you go, 4 Ps. Easy to remember.
Thanks for that, Bob. The great resignation is all over the news these days as people decide to leave the jobs and career trajectories they'd been on for years. What are your thoughts on this particular phenomenon? And are there incredible opportunities that this presents for job seekers?
I don't know about the great resignation. I think that makes for good headlines. I did a poll a couple weeks ago basically saying, hey, the great resignation, I've got 6,000 plus contacts on LinkedIn. I'm not seeing that in my network, but what I am seeing is the great reassessment. So I would say that before the pandemic, the frame was work, and we sort of figured out where my life fits into the frame of work. And I think that has massively flipped as a result of the pandemic, and people are reassessing, and now the frame is my life, and where does work fit into my life? I've got a good friend who moved from Chicago to Connecticut because he wanted to be closer to family. That's fine. I can be in Chicago and I have a job in Chicago, but that's not the most important thing to me. What's more important is being with family, and I'll make my job fit into the priority of my life. The other point that I would just sort of build on just really quick on that, Peter, is, again, kind of back with the great resignation. What we're seeing is people are just getting burned out on their job, but they're a little bit stuck in how to make a move out of that. And what we're hearing very clearly is that I don't have the time. Even if I've got the time, and thank you for mentioning like the network of women that you guys support. That's awesome. For what I'm really learning from the voice of the customer is not only do our women friends not have the time, but they also lack the energy because they still have a lot of the domestic responsibilities that they're absorbing. And so it's like you can even have good intentions that from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I'm going to go work on my job search. When 8 o'clock rolls around, I'm exhausted because I got to go start this whole thing back up tomorrow morning at 5:30, and I'm just tired. And then the third piece, I don't have the time, don't have the energy. In a lot of cases, I don't have the know-how. I haven't looked for a job in 15 years. I don't even know what the process is anymore. And so, people feel kind of stuck. I wrote a post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago that just really resonated with people. And the headline was, I'm stuck. And my inbox filled up with, oh my gosh, that's me. Sarah's story completely mirrors my story. And so I think that that's the headspace that a lot of people find themselves in, is that they're reassessing what's most important to them. Yes, some people are kind of going nuclear and just quitting their job without having another one in place. But I think what's much more common is people are reassessing what's really important to them, both career-wise and life-wise. But sometimes they're just a little bit stuck on how to move out of it and into the next thing.
Bob, the great resignation, one of the things I'm going to ask you a question about now is a little bit about psychology and our own convictions. What we believe about ourselves, how our experiences and our interactions have shaped our thinking greatly generally influence the choices we make on an everyday basis. The clarity of what we want, don't want is not radically different either, right? As a result, it impacts who we are at work and the confidence we bring into work every day. Your thoughts on that, Bob?
Yeah, so that's such a great question, Sri. I speak in alliteration, so we'll talk about 4 C's here for a second. But, when you think about a brand and what a brand really is, I always use the example of Tide. Tide has conviction about where it lives in the store and in consumers' minds. Tide could try and be really broad and say, we clean everything. I can clean your floor. I can clean your car. I can clean your clothes. I can clean you, right? But they don't. We know where to go find Tide, right? Tide's in fabric care. It's in the laundry care aisle in the store, and we know exactly what Tide is. I think the hallmark of a brand is being able to say what it's not. Say, that's interesting. That might be, a good opportunity, but that's not who we are as a brand. And I say the same thing to people as they're thinking about mapping out their career strategy, is like knowing what you're good at, knowing what you care about and are interested in, and then like where's opportunity to go bring those two things together. Basically, who's hiring for that, or how can I go make a living, kind of marrying those two things together. But conviction is really important because conviction leads to clarity. And clarity is back what I was saying a second ago about being able to say no to certain things because they're not a good fit, and yes to other things because we know that's a good fit. And when we've got that clarity, the natural result, in your well-made point, Sri, about just sort of psychology, is when we've got clarity about something, we're automatically more confident. And when we're confident, we sit up straighter, our eyes are more open, we modulate differently. And the beauty of being confident is confidence is contagious. When you believe, you make me believe. And when somebody's kind of like, they're trying to guess the right answer, what Sri want me to say? I think Shri's really interested in omnichannel. Should I say omnichannel? But if I don't believe, if I don't have a conviction that brings clarity to my mind, that makes me confident, then that's why people don't get the job. That's why they're not getting the promotion, is because they're not bringing an earned confidence, not a faked confidence, but an earned confidence that's really grounded in conviction.
Let me remind our audience that we are speaking today with Bob Goodwin, the founder of Career Club. Thanks for that, Bob. And I would say that in the case of Sri, if you ever find yourself interviewing with him, omni-channel and retail media, he will be putty in your hands if you use those two words. No, not just kidding.
My trick, Peter, is am I sitting up? I wanted to ask Bob that. Like, he needs to give us a score when we end this conversation on how we did, you and I.
I think that's probably appropriate.
It'll probably be an alliteration, whatever it is.
Bob, when you created Career Club, I know that you wanted to build something that was fundamentally different than the resume editors or career coaches that we all see advertised all over LinkedIn, right? So help us understand what you are building at Career Club and why mid-career professionals should find it substantially more meaningful than other alternatives.
Yeah, and so I would first of all say that I view what we're doing at Career Club as to be very complementary to what career coaches and resume writers are doing. I'm actually, we talked earlier about Concierge Club. I'm actually partnering with resume writers to help pull out of the client their unique sales proposition, then to get that committed onto a resume, the LinkedIn profile, a cover letter, or an email outreach, so that that messaging is synchronized, so that I don't see a resume and then a LinkedIn profile like, am I even talking to the same person? So I actually find great value in those folks, and people who are great at creating content are partners for me, right? The part that we bring to it, Peter, that's just really unique is the activation piece. There are a lot of people telling you what you should go do. And what I have found is that a lot of the advice I really agree with. I mean, we might have different words for it or sequence things slightly differently, but fundamentally, the counsel is the same or close enough to the same. The part that's really lacking is, here's all the stuff you should go do, and people are still stuck back. How do I go do this? Like, I'm still disorganized. The only thing I know to do is go apply online and wait for people to ghost me. Or I'm being extremely passive and I'm waiting for a headhunter to call me, which, Sri, back to your earlier question, is the most non-strategic approach to take to your career. You're just reacting like a pinball because somebody hit you, and that's what you're doing. So, but Peter, what we're learning is that we are very complementary to resume writers because we're bringing the organization piece, the company discovery piece, which I really want to chat about here in a second because I think it's highly relevant to your audience, and then bringing that sales mentality and sales process to help people execute with excellence.
You know, you used the word content. Peter and I love the word content. It's part of our strategic framework on how omni-channel advancement is done. But however, you know, I know you have a new ebook coming up, and it's called, what a lovely name, Making Your Own Weather. You know, in my mind, I've never conceived how I can make my own weather, but clearly our audience would love to know what they can expect in that ebook from a content perspective, and what sort of overall help, what areas can they look forward to in this ebook that could help them build their careers. And you know, one of the things in that regard is, you know, I'm personally hoping when I read your ebook, Making Your Own Weather, that you'll talk about this being a marathon.
Yeah. So Making Your Own Weather was born out of content that I had been creating over the years, you know, whether it was in LinkedIn posts or presentations that I give to job search groups or other kinds of functions where I was sharing, you know, kind of bits and pieces of job or career management counsel. The way that I kind of pictured it was like I had put pieces of a puzzle out on a table, but I never painted the box of what the puzzle's supposed to look like when you're done. So they were snippets of good things, but I'd never really actually kind of pulled it all together. The genesis for Making Your Own Weather and the title is that we have a lot more control than we think that we have. And that and again, originally thinking mostly about people who are in job transition, it's sort of like, let's get out of victim mode. And all this stuff is happening to me. It's cold. It's rainy. You know, I'm wet. I'm unhappy. Like all this is happening to me. As a salesperson, I kind of like, I'll acknowledge that. I'll be empathetic, but I'm not going to stop there. My job as a salesperson is to go make something happen. So like, if I don't like the weather, Bob, go make some sunshine. And how do I make sunshine? By activities. I need a plan, and then I need to go execute my plan. And, you know, a salesperson isn't waiting for RFPs to come rolling in or, you know, for the phone to ring like, hey, another prospect. It's like, no, here's your territory. Here's your quota. Go. And that's how a salesperson thinks about life. And so I'm like, it 100% applies to a job search. If you're not happy with what's happening to you, you've got a whole new lane available to you of being proactive. So that's kind of just where that title came from, Shri. But what they'll find in it is I just fundamentally believe in attitude is everything. And so you've got to start off with a good attitude and, you know, again, kind of rejecting being a victim and taking more control. People want to help. There's a lot of people out there who want to help you. You know, if you're stuck in fear, confusion, or I think the most toxic is being bitter. If something's happened to you, you got let go of, you got passed over for the promotion, like, you know, being bitter is not good. But getting your head screwed on straight is first base, but it's not completely sequential in that regard. Having your attitude needs to sort of undergird the whole process because there's more downs and ups in a job search, right? You're getting lots of rejection along the way. The good news is, in sales lingo, the good news is you have a quota of 1. You only need 1 new job. You don't need 100. You're not building a book of business. You need 1 new client. So first thing is getting your attitude. The second bit is around personal branding, which we've talked about. You know, what's my unique value proposition? What do I like doing? What am I good at doing? The third bit is on outreach and networking. So I kind of teach 2 things. One is how to more effectively network and treating every networking call like it was an interview, because it is. If somebody's networking with me and I'm not impressed, I'm not going to co-brand with them, if you will, and put my brand on the line and introduce them to somebody else. because now that kind of impinges on my brand. But if somebody's amazing and I introduce them, to you guys, it's like, wow, that person was awesome. Bob knows great people, and you're more inclined to want to help. Then the next bit is on interviewing. An interview is a straight up sales call. Period, full stop. An interview is a sales call. And, I tell people, like, this gets a little bit back, Peter, to your question about resume writers and stuff. I like to say the resume might get you the interview. The stories you tell in an interview will get you the job. And so teaching people how to tell, these really kind of tight, on point, properly contextualized stories. If you told me that Shree's really interested in omnichannel and retail media, I'm going to find a way to cast my stories and pick up on one of those or both of those themes so that my story really resonates. I talk about remixing. It's sort of like, I've got a playlist of success stories. And if I know that Shree's really into omnichannel or retail media, I'm going to remix that story a little bit to dial into what I know Shree is most interested in. If I'm telling the story to the CFO, it's going to have very much of a profitability ROI context. If I'm telling that same story to a CRO, it's about growth, right? If I'm telling that same story to a CMO, it's about brand building. If I'm telling that same story to the CHRO, it might be more around collaboration, culture, chemistry. The melody is the same. It's the same story, but it's been remixed. That's a skill most people haven't even really thought about how to do. But when you can tell stories like that, that's what gets people a job. And then the last little bit is on negotiating. So attitude, branding, outreach, interviewing, and negotiating.
I couldn't agree with you more, Bob. When I go to interview, back in the days when we did live interviews instead of an internet interview, but you should not feel bad if you're doing a live interview, and you should bring with you on your notepad, your folio, a piece of paper that has probably 20 or 30 items on it. Each of them are just a couple of keywords that link to one of those stories that you talked about, Bob. It's a story that you can tell in the context of the person that you are interviewing with, but you should know those stories, and you should be able to look at that 3-word description and immediately be able to launch into that story. This is really about the STAR format of interviewing, and you want to tell your story accurately. I will also say this, I'm very intrigued by this idea of building your own personal brand. Shree, we've got to do that. I don't think we're doing nearly enough to build out the CPG guys branding. I mean, we have to make it ubiquitous, Shree.
Touche.
I know. There you go.
For those watching,
but in any event.
Touche.
So Bob, the pandemic brought about some substantial transformation, particularly in the retail CPG industry, right? So from your perspective, what do job seekers really need to focus on in finding the right opportunity when all of a sudden all the rules have been upended and the skills needed to succeed in this particular industry vertical appear to be changing almost on a daily basis?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about this. So, we've talked a little bit earlier about company discovery and, finding these companies that are doing well. Core to the thesis of Career Club is looking at companies that are getting venture capital funding, right? And CPG is like blowing up with that. I'm going to give you guys some numbers here in a second. But if a company just got $30 million in funding, the only reason they got that money was to scale, right? And they're scaling out across all functional areas. So for listeners, it's not just for marketers. It's not just for salespeople. This is across all functional areas. That company needs more HR, finance, operations. And it's not just Python coders that they're hiring too, right? But for, we're talking about pivoting, Peter, and like mid-career professionals. Not only are they scaling out, they're scaling up. And so this is really like a key leverage point, I think, for listeners, is because the guy that might have gotten them from 0 to 10 million in revenue, right, and gotten them placed in Fresh Time and Sprouts or whatever, right, is probably not the same skill set that's going to get them to 200 million and in Walmart and Target and Costco, right? And so you need that been there, done that experience to get to the next place. The problem is these are companies that you probably haven't heard of with funny names, but they've got money, they've got momentum, and they're hiring. And so what we're trying to do is sort of bridge that gap so that both the companies can be discovered and the talent can be discovered. A couple of things I just want to share with the audience. Like in consumer goods, just in 2021, there's been 730 companies who've raised more than $10 million. In total, they've raised $28 billion. Every single one of those companies is hiring. Okay, that's amazing. And then if we go look at commerce and shopping, which is a topic near and dear to a couple people with microphones in front of them, just in 2021, 380 companies, $37 billion. Okay, half the number of consumer goods, 50% more money. I mean, there's a double down on, everything that has to do with retail and shopping. And so there's a certain company based in Wisconsin who, end of March, raised $210 million. Can you believe it? And they were hiring even for partnership people, which is crazy. And I read an article on our platform yesterday that said that I think they're now the 7th largest retailer by gross merchandise value, if I read that correctly, Peter?
I won't disagree.
Actually, I saw the numbers, Bob. It is top 10 and it's number 9 across many platforms.
So, but the point is like there's so many fast-growing companies who need the skills that people that have got a traditional CPG retail background, people that have already started, to weave in omni-channel or e-commerce into, their portfolio of experiences and accomplishments that just massively look like help to these companies. And the main thing I want to say is, like in 2020, we're talking about the pandemic. That was the biggest year for venture capital funding ever. The money funnel did not stop in 2020. In 2021, we'll blow that away. But if it's companies I've never heard of, I can't find them. And so, I would just really want to encourage your audience. There is an ocean of opportunity out there, and companies who are looking for the full spectrum of skills that your audience would represent.
That brings me, I get the honor of asking you the last question of this episode, a term that Peter and I have been looking at called net wasting. How does net wasting coincide with clarity in your job search, unlocking your ability to find the job that will actually let you succeed and do everything you just said, right? Those well-rounded skill sets. Because I'm convinced more and more these days, a successful career is a marathon of cross-functional skills and not any one vertical. Thoughts?
100%. So net wasting for me kind of can manifest itself in two ways. One is, we were talking earlier about personal branding and people spending too much time on LinkedIn thinking they're building their personal brand by, just liking a bunch of stuff or, just posting a Harvard Business Review article with no commentary on it or whatever. But what they're doing is they're avoiding the hard work of actually doing real networking, reaching out, doing real research on companies, and being a differentiated job seeker. So, but I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm building my personal brand. No, you're net wasting. It sounds like work. It's just not work. The other form of net wasting is undirected networking. And so, because we're teaching people, let's identify what the target looks like first. That now completely informs your networking activities. So rather than, hey, you should talk to my brother-in-law, Bob, he knows a lot of people. It's like, no, here's 20 companies I'm really focused on. Here's why I'm focused on them. And so then I can start to leverage my network much more in a focused way to either help make introductions or, as I'm describing why I've targeted these 20 companies, they might think of the 21st company and go, well, gosh, if that's true, then maybe you should be looking at this company. I can introduce you to Sri. He's a CCO over there. Awesome. Please introduce me. So, unfocused networking might, end up in buying oceans of coffee, but it may not get you very far very fast. Or again, we just need to think like marketers. It's like, who's my target audience? What's my target message? How do I get in front of as many of those people as possible, as quickly as possible?
I'd like to remind our audience that all of the content generated by the CPG guys, it's easily found. Just go to cpgguys.com and you can find our podcast episodes, the list of podcasts that we listen to when we don't listen to ourselves, and links to us on a number of different social media platforms. So please do that. Bob, what you imparted on our audience today about the career search was highly instructional. It gave them many things to focus on, and I am going to encourage everyone listening here, go to career.club and seek out Bob on LinkedIn and follow Career Club on LinkedIn. But thank you so much for coming onto the CPG Guys podcast and talking about something that's important to all of us, which is finding a meaningful career where we can succeed and pursue our passion. Thank you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Again, a real honor to be with you guys. Peter, we've known each other for a long time. Sri, we're getting to know each other. And I'm just so impressed by what you guys are doing. And to have the opportunity to be on the podcast with you guys has just been amazing. So thank you.
Sri, tell me what your big takeaways here were today.
Peter, the one append I would make to everything you already said about this episode is timing, right? We're in the middle of retail and CPG, I would say. Renaissance is the word that comes to me, not revolution. And many are struggling with, do I want to go do something else? Do I want to learn a new skill set? Am I in the right place? I've been in the same place forever. And I think the tips that Bob gave on the confidence piece, asking yourself many questions standing in front of the mirror, I think in these times are so important because there's a lot out there. It's very tempting. You want to run it the first thing. But, I think I've said the word, your career is a marathon 3 or 4 times on this episode with a purpose. But Bob, thank you for being here at this unique time and actually imparting a ton of ideas and coaching so our audience can learn from it. I sincerely appreciate that. Mr. Bond, pleasure doing this week over week, episode over episode with you as always.
Yeah, this is a great way for us to share back with our audience, our community, to help them in their career paths as we end out 2021. So with that, Sri, I will say to our audience, thank you for joining us on this episode, and we look forward to speaking with you in a future episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Happy holidays, everyone. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.